A good evening to you and welcome to News Sources on a day that doctors and nurses are set to enter the fourth day of their nationwide strike. Welcome to the program. My name is Sharon Momanyi.
Indeed, even as the health sector grapples with issues of pay, things in the education sector are on the up and up. Good evening, I am Julie Masiga. Let's start with the highlights.
Haswa kwa wafanyikazi wetu wa serikali. Na leo hii haswa ni wenzetu, madaktari and our nurses. Hakuna mtu amekataa kuongea nanyi. Na tuko tayari. Na munaona tumeweka bidii for the last few days kujaribu kutafuta suluhu. Na suluhu itapatikana. Lakini jameni, tuwe watu ambao watakuwa na huruma na maisha ya wananchi. Tusiseme ya kwamba ati mimi lazima nipate ndio nifanye huduma fulani. Unajua hiyo ingekuwa kama tumekataa kuongea. For the last few weeks, I know the governors, the ministry has been engaging the unions in good faith. Why should we have lost over 14, close to 20 people already? Kwa sababu sasa hata mkisikilizana yale maisha, jameni, mutafufua. Hakuna mtu amekataa kuongea nanyi. Na tuko tayari. Na munaona tumeweka bidii for the last few days kujaribu kutafuta suluhu. Na suluhu itapatikana.
I would call it headline merchanting, where the story or the headline is not related to the story. Because if 20 billion shillings disappeared out of an expenditure of 23 billion or a budget of 23 billion, then we wouldn't have been able to run.
Well, many thanks for joining us on this edition of News Sources. And now, as the countrywide doctors and nurses strike heads into its fourth day, President Uhuru Kenyatta has broken his silence on the industrial action, saying that doctors should have mercy on suffering patients around the country as talks continue. Meanwhile, all indications from CS Cleopa Mailu are that the government is taking a hard stance as the two sides engage in the negotiation tussle. Patients across the country continue to suffer with the death toll rising. The question we're asking tonight is, are the doctors justified in their demands? And right now, I just want to introduce our awesome panel that we have tonight. On my immediate right, we have Lydia Naniu, who is a political activist. Many thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening, viewers.
Right. We also have Betty Waitherero, who is a regular on our panel here. Many thanks for joining us. Of course, Betty is a political communications researcher. Many thanks for joining us. And let's just delve right straight into that issue. Of course, we've seen there's 4 days of really pain across the counties as the health workers have downed their tools. Let's just begin with that question. Are they justified, to go into the strike, to demand what they're demanding? Lydia?
I think that the doctors' strike, the doctors and the nurses' strike, has been an issue they've been threatening forever. Since 2013, the collective bargaining agreement was set up since 2013. And the government has been dragging them along with empty promises. Now it affects both the local, the county level and the national level, because since the devolution of the health sector, then many things have lost direction and lost track as to where we are. And the doctors, I think, they have a hashtag, lipa kama tender, because tenders are being paid for. So why aren't doctors being paid for? That's what it's, hashtag lipa kama tender should actually happen. But when you look at this, their training is to look after people. That is their training. That is what they're trained to do. So they're supposed to have a second human heart that maybe we don't have.
Some sort of ethical
something else maybe. That's extra. However, the demand that the kind of pay, the salary they're asking for, may be unsustainable. They're asking for the minimum wage of 300,000 for the lowest paid, and 940,000 for those for the higher side of payment. In the meantime, we're losing all these people. People have died. People are ailing. I've just arrived from Narok, and the Mission Hospital of Tenwek is full to capacity because everybody has shifted their patients to Tenwek Hospital because it's a mission hospital. Yeah. They're completely unable to manage, but they're struggling to manage because it's not a public hospital.
Betty, that they may have an ethical obligation versus them fighting for what they believe is their right. What's your take on that?
Okay, first of all, I think that you might notice that I have pretty strong sentiments about this. But let me point out that the responsibility over the lives and the suffering of the patients lies with the institutions that are mandated with that responsibility. That means that the hospitals who are supposed to be providing these services are ultimately the ones responsible for the way these services are being dealt with. Over and above that, the doctors have said for the last 3 years that they have tried repeatedly to have this collective bargaining agreement implemented to no avail. And in fact, in October, the CBA, the High Court ruled that the CBA should be implemented. At that point, the SRC and the Ministry of Health did not respond. They are given 30 days. They did not respond. They are given 21 days notice, strike notice. They did not respond. They waited until the 4th of December at 7:30 p.m. to now have a meeting. Now, who meets at night? And so that sort of lack of commitment contradicts totally the things that they're saying. And so we have a reconciliatory tone that's coming out of State House that says, you know what, let's work this out, let's talk, and let's cater to the patients, let's not have any more deaths. But at the same time, you have a contradiction where you have the Labour Court issuing arrest warrants. How can you be expected to negotiate with a party that wants to arrest you? So there's that contradiction, there's that lack of commitment that is clearly being seen on the part of government when they say that they are taking a hardline stance, and yet they have had 3 years. They have had several opportunities to come back, renegotiate, and they have also been asked to implement. Then they now is when that they care about the patients that are losing their lives. We forget that how many patients are already losing their lives because of a lack of resources, which is what the doctors are asking for. Beyond that, let's talk about how the government does have an obligation to the citizens of this country to provide the best health care that is possible and to provide those amenities. And we have paid our taxes. Last month we had about 5 billion shillings was being, it's misappropriated. Let's call it that. Yeah. One side says that it's fraud. Another side says that the money has been stolen. 5 billion shillings misappropriated that belongs to the maternity health care and vaccines. And there's no answer on that. But instead of us finding the culprits responsible for that situation, you have a situation where the doctors themselves are being threatened with arrest. Those who are giving out their services at 90 hours a week are being threatened with arrest instead of those who are stealing from Kenyans. And I think that Kenyans, they themselves are quite fed up with the situation. I think that the government needs to come to its come to its senses and find a way to do the right thing on behalf of the citizens of this country and to listen to the doctors' demands and to actually sort it out. You mentioned that the demands are very high, but when you look at it, they are asking for 8.1 billion shillings to be spread out, which they could have done over the last 3 years. Recently, we found out that 273 MPs stole 4 billion Kenya shillings in 1 year. So clearly, this government does have the money, it does have the capacity.
Right.
Yes, it does.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Irene Njoroge from our Town Centre studios. Dr. Irene is the Deputy Chair of the Nairobi chapter of KMPDU. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Dr. Irene. And maybe just the picture we are seeing from across the country is just patients, wallowing in pain. We have, as of yesterday, 12 people had died across the country. As a doctor yourself and, just part of the group, the union that is agitating for the higher rise, How do you feel seeing what is happening across? Because there has been also that talk about, do doctors not have an ethical obligation to just see that lives are not lost? I don't know if you can hear me. Good evening, Dr. Irene. I don't know if you can hear me. Good evening.
Okay.
All right, so the question that we're asking you this evening, Dr. Irene, is there has been a lot of concern, really, and questions being asked about the ethical obligation to doctors. Like, yes, there is they are agitating for their rights and for increase in payment. But then also, what is that ethical obligation with regard to lives being lost across the country at this time?
I think, let me just say, this is a journey that began in 2011. And there was a strike that we actually had in 2011. And after the strike, we had a return to work formula. With the return to work formula, we were supposed to have various stakeholder meetings in order to come up with what we call a collective bargaining agreement. This agreement was actually, there were various stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health. And the agreement was actually executed in 2013. However, since 2013, it has been a 3-year journey of frustration from the government, of frustration from the various stakeholders. And even after a court ruling on the 6th of October 2016, we've still not seen any lack of commitment from the government. As we speak currently, there's a warrant of arrest out for our officials, and we are asking, why is the government frustrating the process? Much as we have an ethical obligation to take care of our patients, however, I mean, we should not be in a situation where doctors are being frustrated. The other issue is that this collective bargaining agreement not only addresses the issue of pay, but the issue of working conditions for workers, as well as other issues that may not actually be highlighted in this forum. Well, I mean, in terms of patients who are suffering, why is it that the government is not also being held responsible? They've also taken a hardline stance. Today, the negotiations could not go on because there was a warrant of arrest out for our leaders. So as much as we may complain about doctors lacking that moral or ethical obligation to carry out their work, the government is also to blame for this issue to do with the strike. And we actually gave a 21-day strike notice, yet we are mandated to give only a 7-day strike notice. And the government shows up on Sunday evening to try and resolve this issue. So I think the blame should also be on the government as well.
Dr. Njeri, Julie Masiga here. Just to stick with the issue of pay and to play the devil's advocate a bit, don't you think that minimum pay of 300,000 and maximum of 900,000 is perhaps a bit on the high side and unsustainable for a wage bill?
Well, can I just say that even the corruption cases that are going on, the money that is being looted is also unsustainable for the wage bill. Why don't people complain when politicians earn a lot of money? And when we talk about 342,000, we are actually talking about a doctor who's been in training for long. This is a doctor who has to work almost 12 hours per week, up to 20 hours, 12 hours per day, up to 20 hours in a week. The 942,000 that is actually being outlined is for a doctor who's probably in service for almost 25 years. So I don't think it's unsustainable, or I don't think it's actually been unreasonable.
Right, Dr. Njeri, you heard the president speak earlier today saying that doctors should have mercy and have a heart for the patients who are suffering. And as doctors who take the Hippocratic Oath, don't you owe your patients a higher duty of care even as you negotiate your pay? Because the government is also calling for another return to work formula. As you talk, the president said he's willing to talk. Would you be open to that kind of agreement at this stage in the negotiations?
Well, as I really am not part of the negotiating team, however, in terms of what the president said, I mean, he had all the chance to say this way before we even raised this issue. As I said, this is a struggle that has been going on from 2013. There has been no commitment from any government agency in terms of implementing the CBA.
And even after a court ruling in October, there has been no commitment. Why is it that we have to go on strike for our issues to be articulated? And actually, this came from the return to work formula that I mentioned in 2011. So it's been 5 years, and yet there's been no commitment from the government. And as I mentioned, this CBA does not just outline issues of pay. It outlines many other things that are not obvious as we speak.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Njeri, for joining us. We do hope that the issues will be resolved shortly, but to carry this conversation forward, in just 1 year, Education CS Fred Matiang'i has managed to do what no other ministry head has been able to do, bring order into an exam sector that has been ailing. While some hail him as a hero, others are accusing him of taking the reform process a bit too far. The question then becomes, will history judge him harshly or kindly? We're all judging Dr. Matiang'i at this point in time. Some people think he's a hero, some people think he's a villain. He's shaken up the education sector, no doubt about it. And if you remember, Jacob Kaimenyi before him almost made a complete mess of the sector. And Matiang'i came in and was kind of like the Superman.
Yeah.
Betty, do you think that he's going too far? He's being overzealous, or is he really putting us getting people to toe the line in the education sector?
As I recall, in 2015, the mood of the country and the sentiment was that Kenyans were quite disappointed in Kaimenyi at the time. And there was a lot of very, disturbing events going on in the country, flagrant exam cheating, and so many other different cases concerning administration of schools across the country. As Matiang'i tried to implement his principles, we had over 100 schools just light up. And at that particular time, I remember Kenyans really hated this fellow, really, really hated. I mean, they thought that, he's a mess and it's terrible, the whole country is going up in flames. And then suddenly, because exams were marked in time, now he is a hero. Kenyans, we tend to do things on the extremes, yeah? He's either a total villain or a total hero. But in my view, for him to have those exams marked and presented in record time is just an extension of his obligations and his duties. Finally, we have the Education Ministry working as it's supposed to work, despite all the hiccups and all the burnt schools and the terrible damage and cost that came along with it. Finally, we have things working as they should. So in that regard, I have to accept that, he's done a good job. Is he a hero because he's done his job? That, I don't know. I don't think anyone thinks I'm a hero. I think that I'm rewarded with my salary at the end of the month, and I think that that's what his reward is. Should he be praised for, getting things sorted out? Yes, I think he deserves some praise for that.
We've been talking about sustainability because his reforms are rather extreme. With the banning of the prayer days and the half terms and making terms longer and putting children to work harder. How long can we sustain this kind of momentum? Or is it, because we're going to election next year, things might change, there might be a new CS. Are we likely to roll back the gains?
I don't know. Matiang'i, for me, is somebody who has taken the bull by its horns. Completely just decided this education sector was a mess. I've got to do it my style.
Yeah.
And this is his style, and he's picked it up and he's run with it, which is very important. If somebody is given a responsibility, I think it's good that you pick it up and run with it.
Yeah.
He has done this. He has sat back. He has used multi-agencies. He has actually used multi-dimensions. So he's looking at all these things from different angles to see the best way, because he picked up a really rotten and messed up sector. When he picked it up, it was all down and over. So for me, Matiang'i, even if he's being paid, I think he deserves credit for what he has done.
At the very least.
He deserves a medal, because even when you're being paid for it, you deserve to be recognized. Amongst the things in human resource is that one of the things that you need to do is be able to, if you're not reprimanding, you're encouraging, and you're actually rewarding. So I think Matiang'i needs a reward.
Acknowledgement.
And if he was doing, he was helping us with corruption, we probably would be out of the corruption in Kenya.
Probably.
Matiang's style is what we're looking for.
Yes.
We're
And I
looking
think
for,
what it's shown
for
is
that.
that-
And so in terms of sustainability, he needs to be given the time.
Yeah.
Because these ideas and this direction are almost personal. They're things he gets up and drives.
Right.
So if we now move him, it's like moving a good soldier to become a poor officer. If we move him to another sector because he's good, and somebody else comes and sits on this, we're back to square A. So I think he needs to remain with the education sector and see his programs
Till the
through.
bitter end.
Yes.
Are the
All the
systems
sweet
not
ends.
sustainable as they are?
They are, but he's implementing new systems. He's
Right.
changing
Right.
the way things work. He's corrected the cheating, so to speak. He's corrected the marking days. He's even, okay, parents are complaining that, hey, we usually take kids in February. We don't have money now to take
them
our
in
kids in January.
January.
But he's done that, and the shorter the time, it has reduced the corruption.
Right.
Because there's no time to look under, to look for ways to be corrupt.
I agree with you in this regard that actually he should stay and strengthen the
Yes.
institution. However, I do believe that we should reach a point where it should not matter who is put there.
That is true.
And I think that Matiang's got the sort of drive, as you say, to make that institution so strong that
Right.
he can actually, be replaced and things will still run.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We allow him
Ladies,
to run it.
We have to move on now and talk a
Okay.
little bit of
Yes.
politics now.
Yes.
And in the war of words between Deputy President William Ruto and Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho, the governor is defying Ruto's intellectual dwarf label to go head-to-head with the Deputy President in a battle that could be a precursor of what is to come in the 2022 general election. Meanwhile, in his backyard, Nyali MP Hezron Awiti is claiming that Joho is not even in charge of his own county. Is Joho warming up for a 2022 bid? And I mean, we've seen the war of words between himself and Deputy President in the last couple of weeks. And what do you make? I saw you making this expression.
I cannot understand why people think that abusing one another will get you any mileage in politics. You just need to sell your policies, state your piece, and who are you to dictate or to say that somebody else is an intellectual, academic dwarf?
Somebody else.
Who are you? That is, when it comes to IEBC, that's their work. It's not yours. And then Joho, on the other hand, is calling the Deputy President a thief, and
is
that
not apologetic
and
about
that can
it.
be slander. So I think in politics, being the politician that I am, I think you need to sell your policies. You need to sell your agendas, not fling.
But Lydia,
Are we not asking for it ourselves as a public?
Wait a minute. But he's
We seem to really like this kind of...
mudslinging.
Yes,
and
it
this
gets
is
people's
why
attention at the very least.
that is very old style politics.
Right.
We need to move to new style politics. We need to be more mature. Our political direction needs to be more mature. We're not going back to that. And if these are the candidates we have in 2022, God forbid, I don't know where we're going as a country.
So does
These
it
are not
start
the
with the
people.
politicians or does it start with us? Who?
Because
you
we
know,
line
who
up
sets
these
the
arguments
way we play this
and
game?
this mudslinging.
For me, I feel that Kenyans haven't, and I agree with Lydia in this regard, that Kenyans themselves need to make demands
Right.
on
Yeah.
their politicians
Right.
to actually articulate issues.
Yeah.
But then, what are your issues? We have Kenyans who don't even know what laws, and they don't have the civic education. And it's been working in the favor of the politicians, because now we don't even need you to be intellectual anything,
Right.
dwarf or otherwise, because all you have to do is wake up and insult the other party, and that's it. Everyone likes you because he makes the worst insults or whatever it is. In terms of, are they gearing up for 2022? Surely, I think that's jumping the gun. You don't even know if you're going to retain your seat in 2017.
Be alive. Don't know if you're going to be alive.
So,
give it a...
so and the thing of calling
At
each
the
other
very
names, you're calling each other names. No one can clarify your claims. It's demagoguery. It's ridiculous. For me, I think that Kenyans themselves can demand better. So I agree with Lydia on that.
Just to add on to that,
Right.
the matatu sector is an example of Kenyans needing to demand their rights. And in the political sector, Kenyans do need to demand their rights. Because in a matatu, a driver drives like crazy, and you can tell him, stop, this is my life you're carrying.
Right.
And the politician is actually going to make decisions for you and for your life and the direction you take. So you need even intellectuals. I don't know why they didn't pass that bill about having a degree, honestly.
They postponed
Because
it.
they don't have degrees.
I don't know
that's
why they didn't pass it. They need to pass it because we don't want people fighting on the floors.
Right.
We don't want them showing us, this is the kind of language. I probably don't agree with your ideas
Do you think
and
having
your
a degree
ideals.
would be a start to solving
It
that?
I
might
think
not
it
be.
would. I think
I
it
could have
would.
the papers,
I think
but-
it would control.
Yeah.
I mean, give a limit.
What if you have a degree in animal
narrow the
science
gate,
or food
the entry
technology?
gate. You know.
I'm saying, what if you have a degree in animal science or food technology, something completely unrelated to governance and
but
leadership?
exactly.
But it is that you're learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that going to university stops people from fighting. Yeah, I think that actually the sort of politics we practice is based on hyperbole and hubris
right.
and personalities that are in general
talking
the
about
worst,
personalities.
the lowest common denominator. So I said that. Okay.
Right. Right on the buzzer. Well, moving on. Former Director of Public Prosecutions, Philip Kipchirchir Murgor, is the latest entrant into the race to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta in next year's general election. Mr. Murgor throws his hat in an already crowded ring, 8 months to the elections, with a promise to save the country from choking corruption, politics of ethnic exclusion, and economic mismanagement. He's asking President Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto to save the country by not offering themselves for re-election. Does he stand a realistic chance? Does he stand a chance? Third way alliance politics. Is there any point in being a third alternative to the people of Kenya? Because we're so fixed in our ways.
The direction the politics has taken, the 2017 politics in Kenya, the presidential position, is coalitions. And so, walking it alone now, I don't know where you're going in politics today for the presidential seat.
But you see, Lydia, just to interrupt you just briefly, this brings us back to the people of Kenya who have a certain way of voting and of viewing politics. They
Yes.
view politics in terms of coalitions.
Yes.
One on this side, one on the other side.
Yeah.
That's why third way alliances never work. So how do we change our mindset and start looking towards issues if mostly we're just used to voting with our tribal
politics.
blocks? Yes.
But
Tribal
I have a
politics.
question. You wanted to be president, or you have an ambition to, you aspire to be a presidential candidate and to sit in State House, and then you wait 8 months to the election. Should I take you seriously? For 5
I could have
years.
been strategizing.
No, you
really
don't take
locked
that long
up
to think
somewhere
about
thinking
this.
about what I'm going to offer.
And this is the problem. You're waiting for 5 years. Raila Odinga has been, hammering the presidency and, making himself a clear contender for that seat. For 5 years, Uhuru Kenyatta has been attempting and proving himself. Let me say, proving himself before I get hung. Proving himself through the actions of his cabinet and the activities and the projects that he's embarking on.
Right.
So where have you been, Philip? In 5 years, you wait for 8 months, and you want people to
He was praying
trust you
about it,
with.
Betty.
But what have you done?
I think
And that's the thing. You say,
idealistic.
and this is a problem I have. For 5 years, you've been waiting while these two main contenders have been banking on their ethnic blocks and using that as
But
propelling.
isn't there a possibility that
so,
we might get fatigued?
Because
we've been listening to these two monoliths since 2013.
I'll tell you something. We can see the fatigue. Another thing is that people keep on ignoring the power of spaces like social media. You can see the fatigue intellectually being expressed on social media platforms. But does that fatigue translate into actual voting changes? We don't know. First of all, one thing I'll say is that I've heard and I've seen this repeated constantly is that there is no alternative to the current regime. Well, Philip is an alternative, but what alternative is he presenting? He's telling
Maybe
them,
we're just about to hear that. Do you
Yeah.
think it's too late?
I think he's a bit idealistic. I think he's not looking at things.
And idealistic is not what
We're not what we're looking for. We're looking for an alternative. We're looking for the alternative from what we already have. But he's not
want a
offering
realist.
us what we're looking for. he needs, if there's going to be a third force, then there has to be a third force that is a force.
Right.
That is a force.
An actual force.
An actual force. So we're looking at 2 horses, and now the donkey is coming. I'm serious.
Well, we do have a Kurao caught in the Third Way Alliance, who maybe is the fourth force.
No.
Well, the other people...
No.
In
You
this,
know, and I'll say why not, because, and I don't want to mock the fellow, but you have a pay bill number that says buy goods. Now, we can't, seriously?
We don't want to buy goods.
Yes, we don't want to buy.
But then how then does a third force come in? How do you need to package yourself?
But you see, you cannot package and say that, oh, by the way, you need to step down so that, you know, save the country by stepping down. Where is your options? Where are your alternatives? You know, you need to show us, you know what, I'm better than these two put together.
A force.
Yeah.
You have to be a force to reckon with.
All right. We have to be a force. So before we move on to the next one, just to engage our viewers on social media tonight on our Twitter poll, and we're asking you, are you satisfied with the president's response to the health workers' strike? Are you satisfied with the president's response to the health workers' strike? Of course, we saw the president issuing a statement earlier today just saying, pleading with the health workers to be sympathetic to the situation that is going on across the hospitals in the country. So are you satisfied with this response from the president? Do tweet us at KTN News, directly to us at Sharon_Momanyi or at Julie Masiga, and we shall be sampling your responses during this show.